Hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop, and this is Workshop Blether number 17, and it's actually the first one of 2023. So I've not done a Blether since I think it was about mid-December or beginning of December last year. So for those new to the channel, Blether is something that I do every few weeks, and just in terms of shop update, things happening, new stuff coming in, mail drops, that kind of thing. And so this is the first one for this year, and we're going to cover a few topics on the board. So I've got some new tools that I've bought, so I've been spending my money again, not a huge amount, but I'll show you what's come into the shop and talk a little bit about what we're going to use them for. A little bit of a run through upcoming projects which are, ongoing from last year, so nothing new that I've not spoken about in previous Blether videos, I don't think, other than maybe one new one that I've got. I want to talk a little bit about video format that I do, and also a bit of a new feature maybe, and that's audience participation driven. So I'm going to start at the bottom, work up, and while I'm still sat in the chair, and then we'll start moving around the workshop, looking at the tools and having a discussion about other things. So what do I mean by new feature? So this is really largely dependent on you guys. If you don't want it, I won't do it. It's as simple as that. If you want to just watch machining, just tell me, that's fine. I throw as much of that in as I can. The workshop tips videos are going quite well. I'm going to keep doing those. I think they're going down well, and I get a great deal of satisfaction out of transferring knowledge that I've got to others, so I enjoy those as well. But in terms of a new feature, this is something I've seen one or two YouTubers doing, and it's a Q&A video planned for, I don't know when, later this year maybe, depending on whether you guys want it or not. So you need to tell me in the comments. So Q&A is an opportunity for me to do a whole video going through some of the questions that I get on either by email or through YouTube medium, and they could be questions about anything. It could be questions around my history, my industrial history, where I've been, what I've worked on, what my taste in music are, anything, anything. It's fair game. Obviously anything that's personal or anything that's restricted about my employment that I can't talk about, I won't be able to answer. So obviously keep them sensible, but yeah, more than happy to do one of those if people want to have a go at that. If you don't, just let me know and we won't do it. It's as simple as that. I'm trying to do what best pleases everybody on here, so opportunity to do that. If that's something you would like to do, let me know, and I'll take a view based on the feedback that I get, whether we do that or don't do it. Video format. Now this is an interesting one. There seems to be amongst the machining YouTube channels, especially because they're all really that I watch, I've seen quite a few of the creators like myself move to a slightly different format where they show the making of or the machining of or whatever it is, and they voice over it throughout. So you've got the background noise of the machining going on, plus you've got the voiceover doing the description of what's happening. Now in terms of time making videos is a constant battle. If you talk to any creator, for a 20-minute video I probably produce 50 minutes of footage, and you've got to try and weed out the stuff that you don't want to show, or that you do want to show but you can't because you're constrained by time, and only show the bits that show the journey from beginning to end, the most relevant bits, and you've got to try and stitch all of that together and keep some continuity. All of that takes quite some time to do, and my current video format is I sit at a board, talk about what we're going to do, we'll then go to the machine and I'll discuss the setup and why I've done it that way or whatever, anything relevant. Then we'll do a bit of machining, then we'll move to something else, and I'll stop and discuss again. Every time I stop and discuss, it's time lost actually seeing the job get done. So moving to a format where we constantly machine whatever the project is from beginning to end, with a narrative voice over running through it, doing the description of what's happening and why that setup's been chosen and all that kind of thing, allows me to squash far more content into a 20 or 30 minute video, because I've not got the stops for the talking. So more than happy to give that a whirl. Let me know again in the comments, tell me whether that's a preference, whether you'd like that, whether you'd want me to have a crack at it. We'll probably try that on a future video if that's something that you want to see. It just basically allows me to get more content into a 20-30 minute slot for you to watch, rather than just listening to me bang on talking and pointing at things for probably 15 minutes of those 30 minutes. It allows me to get 15 more minutes footage in that time. So tell me about that. It's something we could play around with in terms of video format, something we can try. In terms of upcoming projects, so I've done a little bit with storage. So you saw my storage racking a few weeks ago. There's a lot more to do. I've got some shelves to do. I've got a lot more things to move around and play around with. Again, fighting time, guys. You know, I get probably, if I added it all up, I'd probably spend 30-40 minutes a day in the workshop is all I get. So what you see every week is what I've managed to produce in those 30 or 40 minutes a day, plus the editing time afterwards. So I don't get a lot of time. You know, I've got a full-time, quite demanding job. Don't have lots of time to spend in here every week. So one of the other things I'm thinking I might do later this year, you know, I've done 3 years now, pretty much coming up to the 3rd birthday of the channel, of weekly videos. I might move to fortnightly videos because I'm very conscious that the quality of the content suffers trying to get the quantity of the content out, if that makes sense. I would far rather be making better quality videos that you get far more from than multiple videos that, you know, I'm not doing this for the money, so knocking them to fortnightly makes no difference to me. This is about the quality rather than the quantity. So that's something I might choose to do just to make my own life a little bit easier and give me a little bit more time over a fortnight to get a much better quality video recorded. Again, don't know when I'll start doing that, but we'll go with the flow on that. And if I do go to the fortnightlies, what we'll do is we will probably intersperse that every now and again with a, you know, an off-spec one that's not on a Sunday morning. We'll just throw the odd one in now and again if there's something that I can squash in as an extra. So that's my thinking. Again, I'm keen to get your feedback. You know, I do this for you guys. I do it for me for a hobby because I enjoy it, but predominantly the YouTube part of it, I don't do that for me. I do that for you. Let me know what best suits, and I will try and work around the majority vote and the majority opinion. So yeah, upcoming projects, as I said, a lot more to do with storage. I've got a lot more shuffling around to do. None of that makes good video footage, unfortunately. I'm constrained with time, as you know, therefore, you know, everything else suffers when I'm screwing shelves up to the wall and doing that kind of thing. So again, moving to that fortnightly probably gives me a bit more scope to do some of that stuff and just get a bit more organised. So I've got more of that to do, more organisation to do. Got my VFD on the mill to do. Got my VFD on the shaper that I want to do properly. So I want to take that VFD where it is at the minute on the wall. A lot of the feedback has been about how that's not particularly safe, and I don't disagree with people. So I want to get that in its own proper box, done properly, wired up, and probably with a remote switch box that I can have on the shaper with an e-stop on it, and, you know, all the controls. So there's more to do on that, which is going to be a whole learning curve for me from an electrical perspective. So that's going to be interesting. And then obviously when I do the mill, similar, it needs to be, you know, boxed up properly, wired up properly. There's a whole learning curve again for me on the milling machine. So that's all coming. More on the mill. I've got two drawbars to make for the mill. I've got some Imperial ISO 30 tool holders, and I need some different drawbars for a couple of those, so I've got some drawbars to make. I've got a drawbar maybe to make for the lathe. I don't have a drawbar for the lathe, and I do have a Morse taper attachment for the lathe that needs a drawbar, so maybe a drawbar to make for the lathe. So some drawbar stuff to do. The surface grinder, I want to make some steelwork, some sheet steelwork, and make a bit of a guard on the end of the surface grinder table, because I'm looking to put some coolant mist units, as I've previously said, on my surface grinder, milling machine and lathe, and I don't want to do that on the surface grinder until I've got something to contain at least some of the muck that's going to create in terms of the spray and everything we're going to get. So a bit of sheet steel work to do. Another project I've got coming is the shaper. I still want to make a door for the big hole in the base to get that shut to stop all the swarf from the milling machine going in there, so that's going to be interesting. Not sure how I'm going to attack that yet. Might just go wood, or what I really wanted to do is have a crack at making something out of steelwork, because I've never done that, and that's how you learn, by trying new things. So might do some of that. And then towards the back end of this year, something I've been wanting to do for 2 years, I might start again thinking about having a look at a TIG plant and starting to teach myself some TIG welding, because that's something I've always wanted to do. I don't do a lot of welding in here, so you know, I don't really have a need for it at the moment, but it's something that I've always fancied having a go at, and something that I want to do and just try and upskill. So that's something maybe for way later on in the year, something around that. So they're kind of projects that we've got that we know about. There's one special one that I want to do for myself, which is going to be really quite interesting. So I've always, as daft as this sounds, I've always wanted to make a pen out of metalwork, you know, a writing pen, and that's going to push my boundaries in terms of how small the parts are going to be, especially on my Harrison M300. So that's going to need some novel thought around work holding and things like that, but it's something as a bit of a nice project for myself that I'd like to do, and probably going to be putting some thought into that over the next few weeks and having a crack at making a pen. It's, you know, it's a beginner's project, so it might give other people some ideas, some of the hobbyists, of something they can probably try doing. But again, all made out of metals, not your traditional wood turned pens. This is going to be an all metal project, so something that I've always fancied having a go at. So that's probably going to be upcoming at some point. So lots and lots of gabbling. It is a Blether video. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to just rearrange things a little bit, and we'll get the new tools that I've purchased laid out on probably the welding table, and have a look at what we've got and what's come in, have a bit of discussion around that and the reasons for purchasing them, and we'll bring you back just shortly when we're doing that. Okay, so what has John been spending his hard-earned money on this time? Well, I bought a set of these, which are alloy wheel brushes. Seem to get some kind of makeup pad in there as well, which I'll probably make good use of that one good weekend. And why did I buy those? Well, if you've not already spotted it, I bought myself a new oil can for my cutting oil that I've bought, my neat cutting oil that I bought, and I showed that in my recent video, my recent tips video on coolants. And I've watched Rusty Knox so many times with his oil can with a brush on the end of it, thinking what a good idea that is for spreading cutting oil onto flat surfaces, especially on the shaper. And I have stolen with pride, Rusty, that idea, and this is about the best I could manage. So we've basically done some surgery to one of the brushes, managed to get it onto the end of this pipe, and we've just used some milliput, which is like epoxy resin, to fix the back end in place. So that's all nice and sturdy on there now. So I've now got myself a cutting oil can with a brush on the end of it, which we will be using on the shaper at some point. So we'll get that out of sight. And what else have I been spending my money on? Well, I want to do a lot more on squareness, and those that have been following along with the shaper restoration will have seen me do the vice sort of squareness video a few weeks ago. I want to now move that on to the next phase and start to test that squareness, but not only that, I want to address squareness on my other machines as well, so on my surface grinder and on my milling machine. And squareness is a really difficult thing in a home shop to deal with if you've not got anything as a good standard. And what I mean by a standard is something that is square, that you can trust, that you can base all of your other tests and checks and everything else off the back of. So what I've done is I've purchased my purchase for myself, and I've not had this out of the packaging yet, I've just got the lid off. I have purchased a granite square. So this has come from Zorro, and this is the first time I'm seeing it because I've not even had it out of the packaging. So here we've got a granite square, which is, I think it's 200mm by 150mm, something like that, I think, from memory. And this is a proper granite square for checking squareness. So this will now become my master from a square perspective. So everything else I'm doing with squares in the shop will all be referenced back to this, and this will come in one of my tips videos I'm going to do very shortly, is talking about how you can measure squareness very easily in a home workshop, but you do need some kind of reference to be able to do that. So this is going to be my reference. It's not necessary that you have one of these as long as you've got something that's square, and we'll talk about that in the tips video, but I wanted something like this. I can use this on my mill to check, this is the best way to check the tram of your mill, and this is exactly what they use in industry on CNC machine tools. Obviously not this quality, a much different quality, much better quality. This is import from the Far East, I would guess. Well, it is, but yeah, it's the best thing I've got for square in the workshop, and it's going to, as I said, remain my reference. So you'll be seeing more of that in the coming weeks. So where did I get that from? I got that from Zorro, and here's the shipping note. So if anybody's interested, if you do a freeze frame just now, you'll see the Zorro product code here where my finger is. If you freeze frame that and search that code on Zorro, you'll see this part. If you fancy getting one for yourself, I forget the cost of it, it was less than £100, it was about £70–80, something like that, I think. The only thing I had looked at was this. So this is the report that came with it, the factory report. It's not even in Chinglish, it's all in Chinese. Best I can try and figure this out is, I think across the long edge, it's showing me between the base and the high edge, I've got a 1.5 micron outer square, is what it's saying, is what that says, and I've got a 0.8 micron. I think this is an outer flatness across the long edge. I think that's what that means, but I don't know because it's all in Chinese. I've got no idea what all of that means, if I'm being honest. But this is the one that's important. So 1.5 microns outer square over the 200mm reference. So yeah, perfectly good enough for what I need to do in this workshop. And to complement that, I have purchased this. So this was second hand, and it was in a terrible state when I got it. I paid £4 or £5 for it, I think, something like that. This has been through the John's Workshop Make It Pretty machine, so we got stuck into that yesterday, got it all cleaned up, and this is an Eclipse number 101, made in England. I don't know whether that's going to show up on the camera, hopefully it will. It's got some engraving in there, which probably says this has been in an industrial environment at some point. And I've already got one of these, but the one I've got doesn't have this V in the front, and so I wanted one with a V in the front, and the reason for that will become clear when I do my tips video. This is to help me measure squareness on my surface plate. So this is a really nice thing. Once I got all the muck off it, these are normally painted. This has just been heat treated in such a way that you get this kind of coloured pattern where they've heat treated the base, which is really quite nice. And I couldn't tell from the pictures when I got this off eBay that was the case, because it just looked so grubby. So yeah, it's cleaned up really well. It's in really good condition. We've had a flat stone over the base, and we've cleaned everything up, and it all works very nice, both as a scribing block and also for holding a DTI. So as I said, I paid, I think it's 5-6 quid, something like that for this. So, and that's a very nice bit of kit now. It's all been cleaned up. And to go with that, I bought myself a new DTI that, again, I've not had out of the packaging. It's an import. It's a no name brand. It did come with an inspection certificate with it that, again, I struggled to translate into English, but this is a 2 microns per division DTI, so very sensitive. And again, I want to use this for my squareness checks, and obviously for anything else where I need a bit more accuracy than my other DTIs that I've got. So that's what that's for. So that's really it in terms of me spending the money. And this is all, you know, really around squareness, most of this stuff, if I'm being honest. And I will be going into a lot more detail about what all of that is and how to use it in a tips video, which will be coming along in the next few weeks in terms of measuring squareness in a home workshop. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly whip round the workshop, and there's a couple of other projects that I've probably previously called out, but I'll just call them out again, and on some of the machines, and then we'll wrap this episode up. Okay, we're back at the mill. The keen-eyed amongst you may have noticed over the last few weeks that this gear lever has been swapped around its position. It's now pointing upwards instead of pointing downwards as it used to, into this blue area, and there's a very good reason for that, and I've shown this in a previous Blether video, I think back in December actually. This is an M-Shaw DRO that I've bought, and I've already been looking where this is going to go. So this is going to get fixed onto the front of the machine somewhere here, and it's going to get driven off this piece of bar that's inside, that used to be the depth stop inside the head, which is going to come out. I need to make some kind of an adapter to come out and fit onto the side of this body here, and then we'll just fix bottom and top to the machine, to this front plate. At the bottom I can get into the casting. At the top, until I whip the front plate back off, I'm not quite sure what's behind here, but we'll strengthen it up if it needs it and screw this in at the top. So I'm looking to make this quite a simple quill DRO install. So that's something that's upcoming on the milling machine in terms of projects over the next few weeks and months. Also, as shown in my last Blether video, I've got my coolant mist unit, so I'm starting to get a little bit more organised now. I've got my compressor almost in the right place, starting to get bits of pipe work and fittings and things that I need, and yeah, a video or two are going to be around coolant mist units, probably one on the mill, one either on the surface grinder, on the lathe, not decided. I want to test those out and give my, I've never used one, so I want to give my thoughts and opinions on them, and that will be linked to the recent coolant tips video that I did, all very relevant to that. So that's really upcoming stuff for the mill. And also, when I fit my VFD to the milling machine, what I'm planning to do is make use of this switch box here for controlling the mill. Well, I don't, you know, this is a good switch box. I don't want to spend lots of money replacing with another switch box that does pretty much what most of these buttons will do. But what I need to do is figure out how I get this switch box to play with my VFD. Obviously this is all wired up to a 24 volt system at the moment that's part of the mill. All of that will need to come out, and I'll need to kind of tap into the switches, you know, the e-stop and the spindle start and various other ones that I can use for different functions. But I've got a lot of learning to do before I start taking this to bits, because I don't want to take my mill out of commission for too long. So that's going to be another upcoming video, and I'm really looking forward to trying to run this mill not off my static 3-phase converter that I've got, because I'm fairly, and always have been, convinced that I get a lot of electrical noise on this machine from that converter that translates its way through the gearbox into the spindle and then into the workpiece, that gives me far more vibration on this machine than I should get. You know, I've watched other people with these machines that are running on either full 3-phase or on a VFD, and they seem able to take much bigger cuts and without the noise and chatter and vibration that I'm getting. And I've always suspected it was electrical noise that comes through from the transformer, so I'm really looking forward to testing that theory out. So that's probably it on the milling machine. We'll just spin round to the surface grinder. Okay, so here we are at the surface grinder, and what I want to do, so the wheel spins counterclockwise, so as and when I put a coolant mist unit on, it will be on the left hand side, obviously pointing at the wheel, and obviously as the wheel spins, all of the spray and liquid and muck is going to go this way all over my bandsaw, so, and all over my racking and shelving that's next to it. So what I want to do is make some sheet steel work guarding up that goes around this end of the table that stands, I don't know, about this high, as long as it's not interfering with anything, and yeah, just catch and stop a lot of that muck and dust coming off the surface grinder. And you know, again, from a sheet metal work perspective, I've not really done hardly any of that, so that's going to be a learning curve for me, and I've got no sheet metal work bending and folding capability in the workshop, and I've got no room for any in the workshop, so I'm going to have to be nicking the steel plate with an angle grinder with a slitting wheel in and bending as best as I can on my welding table with some clamps and things like that. So that's going to be quite an interesting one, but we're going to try and bend something up to go around here to make a bit of a guard at the end of the surface grinder. Okay, those that remember the command and control centre that I put in a long time ago, this will probably make you smile. I don't think I've used it. I've used it a couple of times, but not really for its intended purpose. So this is just taking up a load of space on this wall that I am desperately in need of space. So this is all going to be coming off here, and what I want to put on here, I want to make this bit of wall, but I've got lots of wires and cables to negotiate obviously here, so I want to make this wall a bit of a tool wall. So Allen keys, spanners, screwdrivers, all the stuff that's kicking around in various different bits of the workshop, to put some kind of tool wall on this bit of board above my roll cabs and above my surface table and things like that. So all of this is going to get rethought. All of this is coming off. You know, I don't play music when I'm in here. I don't, you know, because I'm normally filming most of the time, so I don't bring drawings in and view them on the screen. So everything that I plan to use this for it's not getting used. So it's just taking up valuable space. So this is all going to come off. So this is a question out for the viewers. I've seen the kind of, I don't know what you want to call it. It's like hardboard or something of that nature, kind of tool boards that are full of holes. I've never used those, never been anywhere near them. If anybody can suggest whether they're good, bad or indifferent, I could fix those, you know, above in front of all the wires, and then I could have all my tools hung on one of those boards potentially, but I don't know what they're like. I don't know whether they're good, bad or indifferent, so any feedback on that would be greatly appreciated. So this is kind of the final one, and I have discussed this before. On this Condor cast iron base under the shaper, I've got all of this storage capacity in here, and I want to start making good use of it, but at the moment it's getting full of swarf off the milling machine, and I want to make a door to cover this up to finish the shaper off properly. My compressor is now in its final resting place. This is where it's going to live, so at the moment a door would make no sense, because I'm going to have to move the compressor every time I want to open it. But as part of the rewiring of the shaper, I'm also going to be moving the shaper, so the shaper is going to be going at sort of 45 degrees backed into the bench, which will allow me access into here. So again, a bit more of a probably a sheet metal work project, maybe, don't know. I've not done any welding for a long time, that kind of thing, so want to try and keep my hand in and keep trying to improve with my sheet metal work. So I might make a simple framework up. I've got some 2mm plate in the workshop, make a front cover, or I might, as one of my subscribers suggested, just go for a standard kitchen cupboard door or something that I can pick up from somewhere and just make something out of wood, which would be a lot quicker, a lot easier, but wouldn't test my skills or make me really learn anything new. So I'll see how we go with that, but either way I definitely want to put a door on this side of the shaper to complete that machine fully. Okay, there we go guys, that gets us the end of the first Blether for 2023. I'm probably only going to do a couple more through the course of this year, because I do realise that most of you guys like to have the transfer of knowledge or watch machining and watch setups and things like that, but these videos really help you guys see some of the stuff that's upcoming, help you suggest some things to me that I may not have thought about. So I you know, the two-way feedback's fantastic. And also, as we said at the start, some of the stuff around the video formats and the Q&A and things like that just help me try and, you know, please as many people as I can in the audience with various different things. So just running through those again. Let me know what you think around the Q&A. Do you want one, yes or no? You know, just give me the comments, whatever, and I'll work off the majority opinion. Quite happy to do it, quite happy not to do it, makes no difference to me. And also let me know what you think around the video format of the showing the project and just doing a voiceover narrating it with the details, the technical details and the knowledge transfer, rather than the sort of stop-start format that I use at the moment. So that would be really helpful for me, and again I'll go with the majority opinion of what people think. So that's probably it for this Blether. So thank you all very much for watching. Thank you to the subscribers that have come along and also the new subscribers, and we'll catch you all very soon on another video when we'll be making something else.